Okay? Okay, so we've been working on proposals, all right? And the next phase of this is going to be presentation. You guys have to present your proposal idea in a presentation format to this class, okay? We're going to work on those next week in class. You will have your proposals back tomorrow. I don't have them all graded. I thought I'd get them done, and I fell asleep early last night. So we'll get those back to you. And you're going to have to then take the pertinent information from your proposal and put it in a presentation, okay? So you're going to have a proposal that has a problem or presents a problem and a solution. You're going to, or it's a project with a project that comes to completion, if you will, okay? A lot of your proposals are going to be returned to you tomorrow with a lot of things on it, like we're not writing a letter to ask permission to do this. This is a setup for you to write a proposal that this is important to the entity, to the person, to the school, to yourself, that get this done, okay? A couple of you, I wanted to talk just really quickly because some of you may not know about this, but 2 nights ago there was a community meeting downtown, and it was about the money that we are been endowed with the Archie Lorenzen Foundation. $3.5 million we've been endowed money to Darby School. There was a community meeting to come together to say, hey, what should we build? What should we spend this money on? What are the community interested in? How would they like to see the school spend their money? And people came with, you got it, proposals, ideas, okay? Some people came with fully thought out proposals that were actually, this is legitimate, this is what I think, this is how it would need to happen, this is the timeline, this is how it would be important to see that we bring this idea to fruition, not just spend money, okay? Interestingly enough, I learned yesterday that Mr. Renneker is working to have a forum for students, okay? 60 of the students here at Darby High School are writing proposals right now, okay? So when you get your proposal back, you could even think about it as a possible proposal that could be incorporated into that financial endowment from the Archie Lorenzen estate, okay? Some of yours, I know one student in 3rd period is working on a proposal to add an automotive class, like an automotive shop. We don't have that here, but I know that Mr. Fiedler has been working with like the shop classes and doing oil changes and things like that. So there's some possibilities for some of you to actually take your proposal a little step further, and when we have that student meeting, he's going to have that student forum, you could present your idea at the student forum, and you would already have something in writing. You would actually already have a presentation. You may not be allowed to give the presentation at that time, but you would already be prepared to do that. So this could be a real deal for you. This could be like a real action experiment. Anyway, so we talked about proposals. Today we're going to talk about presentations. So in your notebook, this is the next thing. I do believe it's number 11.
12.
Mrs. Whitney?
11 was citations.
Oh, I didn't put citations in my book. Sorry, people. All right. Number 12, presentations, okay? Now, you guys, there are multiple avenues for presenting, okay? There are lots of presentation software out there. But the easiest, the number 1 most used, is what? Yep. And I bet you guys have already all done PowerPoint presentations in your little world of career of high school. But I'm going to go over the specifics for PowerPoint that I'm going to say are what we want when we're giving a proposal presentation, and we need to be very succinct. How many of you hate it when someone gives a PowerPoint presentation, they put all their information on the slide, and then they read their slides to you? Yeah, I hate it too. Arms in the air, like you just don't care. There you go. PowerPoints are awful. if the person just puts every bit of data on there and then reads it to you. It's no fun. Nobody wants to have that happen. So, for your PowerPoint, there's some specifics that we're going to go over. And then I made a quick PowerPoint just to give you examples. And so, first of all, there are some criteria for your PowerPoint. Now, I do want to suggest that if you're tired of using PowerPoint, you could use Prezi. That's a presentation software that's online. You want to make sure if you do use a Prezi that you download it to your computer so you're not working so that when you give the presentation you're not presenting in the web in case the internet goes off. Fortunately the internet's on down here, but it's not on at my house. I don't know why. Yes, I paid the bill. No, that was the next question. All right, what's another one? Can you think of another presentation software? Yeah, Google, it's called Google Slides, and that's what I made the quote-unquote PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to show you. If you're an Apple user, okay, there's a presentation software called Keynote, okay? There's probably a million, to be honest with you. I don't really personally care which presentation you use, but I want you to use the criteria for PowerPoint when you create your presentation because it's going to be important. All right, so number one, we have fonts. Okay, this is the kind of one that gets me all the time because students like to experiment with fonts. That's great. Play around with it on your own time. Make some PowerPoint presentations that you're not showing anyone. But when you're presenting to an audience for business, for a proposal, for something to get your information out, I want you to use common fonts. Fonts that everybody knows. We don't want you to use, Wingdings or something crazy on your font selection, or RoboCop, or handwriting script, or any of those, because they're more difficult to read. And the further the person away from the presentation, much harder. So we want you to use things like Times New Roman. Okay? Courier. Arial. Okay? And these fonts are what we call sans serif. So if you don't like those three fonts, you can search in your presentation format for sans serif fonts. And all sans serif means are without feet. So in other words, when they're writing, you don't have like an R with a little foot down on it, an I, so you don't have these. Fonts without those are easier to read on PowerPoint or presentation, all right? No more than 3 fonts sizes, no more than 3 font sizes per slide. Okay? So you don't want to have like huge, little, big, small, tiny, and all over here and everything. So you want to keep it succinct. Specifically, you want to use things like, keep it in this area. Titles. So your main titles, and I'm going to go ahead and fire this up so you can see this. So your main titles, we're going to say sizes 48 to 54 point. Okay? All right. Gonna have to turn this guy on. All right. So, there you go. So you can see it up here in just a minute. So your main titles, 48 to 54 point. And that seems really, really huge, but remember your audience is back there. Then your main text titles, should be like 32 point. And then your smaller text lines, 24 points. So I'll just hit that row of lights over there. Okay, so you can see on the slide on the PowerPoint, I did two things in this one. First of all, this criteria for PowerPoint is 52 font, 52 point Arial. Now, I did this to show you that dark, we're going to talk about contrast next, or yes, contrast next. Dark on dark doesn't show up very well out there, does it, Lane?
No.
It's hard to see. But light on dark is the best contrast, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. Then this is your subtitle. And I've got it at 28. You could definitely put that one at 32. And then your text would be the smaller, okay? All right, here's a key. That's so much fun. Color. People love to use color, okay? Here's the problem with some color. I am going to tell you that you should never, ever, 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 ever use green and red text. Why? Why? It's hard to see. Why else? Colorblind. If you are giving a presentation on a proposal to a whole room of really important people, and 4 people out there are colorblind and you did out all in red and green text, they're not going to be able to see what you wrote very well. I'm not colorblind, but we could always ask. Michael told me that. So you could ask anybody, but that is how difficult it is to see that red and green. There's no contrast for them. And that's what happens. So you want to make sure that you never ever use black, green, and red when you're doing a proposal presentation, okay? Because the idea here is you want people to view it. You want to use color for emphasis only. All right? So you're going to stick with, you're going to see this. I have blue and white and yellow. We're going to stay with that theme. Okay? And we're only going to add color when we want to emphasize something. If we want to highlight some text. But we're going to do that pretty much just sparingly. Okay? The contrast, you need to have a contrast between your text and background. Okay? You have to have that contrast. And the best is dark background, light letters. I don't know why, but that's what's visually most appealing. So background dark, then light letters, and okay. So there's a main text title at 32 point font. So we're going to move on to text. This is an example of text, and that's exactly what I want you to write. When you're using text on your slides, fewer words are better. Okay? Strive for that open white space, quote unquote. White space is just what's empty here. And I want you to limit your text. So you're going to strive for 6 or 7 words per line and 6 or 7 lines per slide. Okay? So in other words, you're going to think of this. 6 by 6 is your maximum text. You can do that with bullets. You can do that with numbers. Or you could do that in a paragraph format. Okay? Questions? All right, the last thing is graphics. And for that, I made another slide here. Okay? So for your graphics, sorry, this is hard to see, and I knew that was going to happen, but in Google Slides, I could not figure out how to make an arrow big. I'm sure there's a way, but I couldn't quite come up with it. But you want to use graphics that are easy to read. So this is an example of a pie chart. You want to stay away from tables and just use pictures that help support your idea, okay? This is an example of highlighting text where you would highlight the box, the text box, and put darker than letters in there, bringing that contrast back out. So basically what it does is reverse from dark to light and makes it from light to dark, and it gives us a highlight of that text. When you use graphics, you also sometimes like to use special effects, right? I mean, special effects are fun. They make the poor PowerPoint interesting. But when you use special effects for this presentation, you choose one animation and stick with it. So for this example, I use the same effect animation consistently, comes in from the right, and then a picture comes in from the right. So you don't create confusion with your animation. Okay? Does anybody have a question? You can turn it off now.